So I'll be presenting my senior lecture today. Basically, the theme of this lecture is just talking about what it is to be the resilient resident during times of adversity, and essentially equipping ourselves for life as doctors with a potential adversity to come. So I think it goes without saying, being in medicine, being a provider is definitely a privilege, right? We have sort of this honor of treating patients in their most vulnerable states. And we essentially all have like our why. Why do we do this? For some of us, we wanted to help people. Maybe we were motivated by somebody. Um, I put this little picture here that my mom sent me the other day because it was like an exercise we did in preschool. And it was like, what is your nicest dream you've ever had? And my dream was I wanted to be a pink Power Ranger because I wanted to save people. Needless to say, that's not a real occupation. So the next best thing was, being a doctor. And again, just with the idea of just wanting to help people, just being inspired by some, people in my family. And I think just early on, when many of us were trying to go into this field, we were met with what some of those challenges might be, right? Maybe our parents told us, our teachers, our counselors, we were pretty well aware of some of the difficult tasks that come with medicine, right? The challenges that we're, essentially prepared for, essentially the things that we hear about medicine is like long hours studying, sleepless nights, missing out on life events, the financial burdens that come with medicine, work-life balance. We talk about burnout day in, day out, right? But then we sort of have these challenges that we're not necessarily prepared for, right? And when we're going to college and med school, grad school, residency, right? Like that's quite a bit of time that's going by, and around us, life is happening, right? Loved ones are getting older. They're, maybe they have medical problems, and you're seeing them, have complications from those medical problems. They're getting sick. In those unfortunate circumstances, you might lose a loved one. We're dealing with our own illnesses, relationship matters, fertility issues, financial hardships, the political climate. And I think for many of us, COVID, right? None of us were really ready for that. And so while life is happening around us, we're just supposed to show up, right? Um, and one thing about medicine is it's not the most forgiving, it's not flexible. It doesn't really afford us time to deal with life matters. And patients come first, and us, we need to tend to them, right? And we have to be on all the time. And, one could argue it's sort of dangerous, to be present if we're not physically or like mentally there, right? So what do we do? How do we navigate that? So I can't talk about adversity without talking about some of the things that I went through in this journey. So one of the things I always talk about with people is like my dad. So starting off in this field, I took a break between college and medical school because my dad was sick. I wanted to spend time with him, my family, and just sort of like help out and things like that. And so we had like transitioned my dad to like hospice or whatever. And in terms of his like health, he wasn't like getting worse. He wasn't getting better. He was just kind of like the same. So I was like, okay, this is a good time to like go back to school. I did like a post-bac program before medical school. And so I remember day one, I was like, all right, like I'm gonna like focus, I'm gonna grind. I need to get into medical school. I need to study, blah, 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 blah. And day one of orientation, my dad passes away. It was devastating. It was hard, right? And in that moment, you're grieving, you're sad by the loss of someone, but as many of us or at least for myself, right? In my mind, I'm also thinking like, okay, well, what do I have to do? Like I have these tests that are coming up. I have to study. Like, how am I going to get through this? I'm supposed to grieve, but I need to be present and do X, Y, Z. And it's just like the checklists are just like, spiraling, right? So I had the decision of either I can like pause, take a break, take the year off and just like spend time with my family or continue. And I decided to continue, but I don't think I handled it the best way. I kind of was like a robot. It was just like study, grind, do what you need to do, and you focus on these other things later, right? Don't recommend. The other thing I've been like very transparent about was, another adversity was last year. I had issues with my health, and being a resident, again, it doesn't afford you time to deal with life matters, right? So I had very, very terrible case of fibroids, which meant I was in a lot of pain all the time. I was like hemorrhaging. I needed blood transfusions, and even with all of that, it was like, well, I got to go to work. I got to figure this out. Bring a pair of backup clothes. You have things to change into. And it was literally just band-aids after band-aids after band-aids, right? It wasn't enough for me to get a transfusion in ISO-1 at downstate. Like I was over here like, oh, I can just maybe figure this out. I could walk around with an IV pole and the blood hanging and go see patients. Like, don't recommend. But this was again sort of like my mindset, like I have to go to work. I have to figure this out. And it wasn't until I was dealing with a patient, um, and I like mentally like I was so anemic that I couldn't think through like a recess. And I was like, okay, it's not even about me, it's taking care of patients. I'm clearly not in the state where I should be to do that. So again, it's this notion of like pushing through, being forced to handle things through adversity. And it's like, why do we do that? So I just want to talk about like being this resilient resident in times of adversity. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? Like, why are we pushing through? Like, persevere? Like, what does all this even mean? And I think as doctors, specifically ER doctors, right? I think our threshold for pain, suffering, it's pretty high. And I think we know how to persevere. We are experts at bouncing back and pushing through. Even in the word persevere, ER is like listed twice. Like, I just thought the irony of that was great. But, and I think sometimes that translates into other areas of our life, and it's essentially detrimental to our well being. And I think it's always important for us to check in with ourselves and recognize that we're humans and we don't always have to push through, right? We don't need to be martyrs. Um, I put the little engine that could. I might be telling my age, but like I just goes to show like growing up here, it's even instilled in us. Like see it through, push through. I think I can, I know I can. And all of that is great, but we need to realize that as humans, there is a point where we can eventually break, right? So what do we do in these moments, right? And I think just like being chief this year, I had the honor of being in or just folks sometimes felt comfortable just being vulnerable with me and discussing maybe their own adversity. And I think it's not uncommon for a lot of us, right, in these moments where something is happening and the first thing we think of is work, right? We think of like, how do I handle this? I don't want to miss this many days. Are we gonna have to activate sick call? And I think like that's there's a responsible aspect of that. We're just trying to make sure our ducks are in a row. We're just trying to understand the logistics. But I just think more importantly, we just need to check in with ourselves and understand that before all of that, like, how are you doing? Right. Um, so in these moments, right, like God forbid something happens, you hear something, you get bad news, whatever it is, right? Like reach out to your senior, your attending, your co-residents, leadership. One, because folks can check in with you, and two, because there are people who know how to navigate this, right? They can provide suggestions and resources in these moments, right? In these moments, if you need to, take the day off, take one day off, a couple of days off, whatever it is that you need to like make sure that you're in a better space. If you're at work, if you need to sign out your patients, then you do that, right? And if it's more than just, if you're going through something and it's more than just like, a day or days that you need, maybe you need to move elective time, maybe you need to move your vacation time, maybe you need to take a leave. But by reaching out to like leadership, and they can offer suggestions on how to navigate this. So I included like the 8 dimensions of wellness. We always talk about wellness. It's touched on multiple times. And basically the idea of this one is that wellness is multidimensional. You need essentially all of this to like achieve like overarching like wellness. And if you're lacking in like one of these areas with time, it negatively impacts you, right? But then the other idea is that by having some sort of foundation in terms of your wellness, it allows one to bounce back a lot quicker when dealing with adversity. And what wellness looks like for me looks different for somebody else. We all prioritize different areas or different realms of this, but it's important to just have some sort of foundation there. So I have the KJ recipe of like what has worked for me over the years in dealing with life. And I just want to preface this by saying that this is what has worked for me. In no way am I trying to shape or make suggestions or sway you in any way. This is just simply what has gotten me through certain things over the years through residency, med school, and all of that. So for me, one of my big things is my spirituality. And I just say spirituality, mindfulness, right? For me, my faith has been a staple in just like overcoming like adversity. And for me, that's prayer, that's reading scripture, that's worship. We all come from different religious backgrounds. Some of us are spiritual, some of us are not. If this is something that's part of your life, it can be very helpful in these moments. Um, and then like journaling. So I think I've talked about this with a few people, but the 5 minute journal, I absolutely love. It's just basically 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night. There's like, the same prompt every day. It's asking you like, what are you grateful for? It lists some affirmations. At the end of the day, what did you learn about? What did you learn? What did you take away from today? Did something go good? Things like that. And it just allows you to constantly be in that like self-reflection mode. And even when things are not going well, even the slightest things, you're reminding yourself to be grateful and thankful for. Um, Meditation is also a big thing. There's been like a lot of data to suggest that meditating, just the state of mindfulness, is helpful in like the bounce back when you're going through something. And then just like podcasts, also, I like a good motivational speaker, TED Talks, whatever it is, like listening to maybe someone that has gone through a similar journey and just kind of seeing how they've overcome and how they've persevered. It's just like one way to navigate that. The other big thing is social support. Social support is huge. There are tons of articles that suggest that the resilience of an individual is like highly independent on social systems that provide support. Right? They looked at like military personnel, those that were like during their deployment, post deployment, if they had those social support systems in place, they were least likely to develop like PTSD. They looked at like there were systemic reviews that they looked at that showed that social support was one of the more common coping mechanisms for those that were dealing with like racist encounters. Just like the list goes on, right? COVID was a big thing. They looked at social support during the pandemic, and that was like a protective factor against depression. So it's the literature is highly suggestive that it's helpful, right? And social support for everyone is different. For me, I kind of broke it down. For me, it's my family is one. My mom, my sister, my niece, nephew, my extended family, and family for other people may not be people that are related to you, right? It could be like a neighbor or coworker. But my family was key when dealing with adversity. My friends, and these are my friends outside of residency, right? So just having a tribe. These are my med school friends, people I went to school with, an undergrad, people that I grew up with. Just having that tribe outside of work has also been helpful and been key. My co-residents. So I think in my co-residents, I mean like my class, my juniors, my co-chiefs. I think this was also very telling when it was like during like times of COVID, right? Like although my class, we weren't there for the first like round of COVID, if you will. But when we had just matched, right, like 2 weeks later, like the world blew up and everything was shut down. And basically, Brooklyn, particularly Kings County, downstate, was like the epicenter for COVID. Like we were literally like walking into the front lines. And I remember just like being so nervous, being so scared. Like my roommates at the time in med school, my friends in med school, they couldn't really understand because they weren't going to Brooklyn. And so just having like my cohort, like a group of people who I haven't even met yet, and just being able to like share in that fear was really helpful during that time. And then I highly recommend, if any of y'all are Grey's Anatomy fans, just having like a Christina Yang, if you will. I'm mainly saying that like just having like a person, right? That could be somebody in residency. I have my person in residency, I have my person outside of residency, and just someone that you can go to when things are actively happening, just to like quickly run things by, vent, cry, whatever it is, right? Me and Lexi, for me, that is Alexa Zumbren. And we joke about how like there's a restaurant or like a bar nearby, Midwood Flats, that they probably know us by name because we are always there when stuff isn't going as well. But it's just helpful, having that person in your support system, when you're dealing with adversity. And then, oops, sorry, I had to shout out my Hassel family, right? I think your residency families are also big when it comes to social support. This picture means so much to me. I remember after the beginning of the year when I had surgery, and after my surgery, I had like a post-op complication, and essentially we were supposed to have like a family dinner, and I couldn't go because I had to go back to the hospital. And I remember just feeling so down and so like feeling sorry for myself. And um, my residency family sent this picture, and why it's so meaningful to me is anyone that knows me knows that I love a Cosmo. That is my like beverage of choice. And the Hassel family had concocted the KJ. And just like seeing that in that moment, just like definitely, and they took this picture, and just like seeing that in this moment, just like definitely lifted my spirits. And I say that to say, like, really relying on your residency family. And I was adopted later on and throughout residency, and so I'm just so thankful for them. So next, as part of the whole like implementing elements as far as like coping with adversity, I think physical activity and self care are like big things, right? And that looks very different for everyone. There's a lot of data on physical activity and mood, mental health, and things like that. Gym memberships in the area, there are so many places that are inexpensive. Like Blink offers a discount to healthcare workers. A lot of us use ClassPass, which allows you to like experience different like workout sessions in the area, whether it's like boxing, CrossFit, spin. You can like sample with all of those. There's free stuff on YouTube. We have our county teams. And then I also wanted to incorporate self care in this. I think it's really important to just like implement, even if it's a few minutes of just you time, right? And that could be like reading a book, that could be a home facial. I put in County Nails, which is like a thriving group. And it's just basically a group of us that just like to show off like, what we do for self care, and our manicures, or make recommendations on like different places in the area as it relates to wellness. So just highly recommend like dedicating that time for you. And then I also suggest just in these moments asking for help and like reaching out, right? Like we are human. We're not superheroes. And I think we buy into this notion that we have to like, again, push through, persevere. And I think, part of being a leader is knowing when to ask for help, right? Um, Mama J, Dr. Gennaro, has been an asset to like a lot of people in our class. I've gone to her like when I was dealing with stuff, in residency, and not even just the emotional support that she provided. It was also just like the like helping us like helping me navigate through certain situations, giving me ideas of what I can do. And it's not just, Mama J, it's a lot of our attendings, a lot of our APDs, Willis. So just in these moments, like, reach out, ask for help. And then the last thing I want to touch on was just like therapy, right? And I know for at least in my culture, like therapy is a like kind of like a faux pas, right? Like it's not something that a lot of historically a lot of Afro Caribbeans really embrace. But I think it is helpful to have like a third party perspective. It helps establishing coping mechanisms, most importantly, dealing with trauma, helps promote better relationships, regaining balance. And there's so many options out there. Downstate offers the GME offers like counseling services. You can go through your insurance and see what's available to you. There's so many online platforms that you can just do this from the comfort of your own home. So definitely considering that when dealing with adversity, or even not when dealing with adversity. So I just say all this to say that, we most of us have dealt with adversity or will deal with it at some point in our lives, and just like, recognizing what our limits are in these moments, right? We are not martyrs. It doesn't show any sign of weakness to ask for help. And I think just establishing sort of these like core components and building of wellness in order to help build resilience and assist with like bounce back in those times. Um, it goes without saying, I am so thankful and grateful to this residency program. I'm gonna keep it together, but I don't have enough words to express the gratitude. I came to this program. I was a sub-I, and I came to this program. Like I fell in love with this program because I saw the number of ER doctors that came before me that were just amazing physicians, and so I came here with the intent of being cultivated into a great ER doctor, and the relationships that I've acquired along the way are without a doubt like I cherish. And I just want to special shout out my class. Um, you guys all are phenomenal doctors, and you guys all inspire me a lot. And I'm just so excited to see like where everyone, where everyone goes. Love you guys.